Welcome to the casting couch. We're here. Jared Feathers in the house.
Sorry.
I usually would say that on Zoom, but we're actually in my house.
This is a very nice house.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. You're a house in the house.
Do I
if you know what I mean.
begin taking my clothes off now?
Slowly.
Okay.
Start with the
Socks?
one sock.
Okay. They're going to get more than they bargained for.
One sock.
And this one.
One sock. Well, this is fun because I'm, 5 or 6 weeks post-show and crushing it.
Yeah.
In the deload. I'm actually finishing up the first mesocycle post-show. And this has been the best. I mean, you guys watched the video that I posted, was it maybe a week ago from when they're going to see this. This has been the best post-show period I've ever had. I'm 8 to 10 pounds up, mentally, emotionally, just good. But I think a lot of that was because I was just so fucking excited to get into this post-show structure.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's been really fun.
I mean, you and Marvin both. I was like, guys, shut the fuck up. You both were like, man, I just can't wait to improve. The show is 2 days from now. And you guys are like, oh, I just can't wait. I'm like, guys, focus on the freaking show. You're already talking about improving. What are you doing? God, one day at a time.
That's literally what
you and Marvin both. You probably had a whole fucking conversation about it, I'm sure.
Yep. How is Marvin?
Good.
Shout out to Marvin.
Yeah, shout out to Marvin. Back in Hong Kong, doing his thing.
What a guy. We need to go visit his ass in Hong Kong.
Oh yeah, he's trying to get us work visas to go out there. So I'll tell him you want to come too, and we'll see what we can do.
That would be sick.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Be fun. Hong Kong's one of the best cities I've ever been to.
Wow. Well, cool. Here we are, improving already post-show, and I've been really, really excited about this structure. It's been really fun. I've honestly nailed it. I think considerably all the way. But I don't think I've personally found resources or information on post-show training structure.
Sure.
Anytime I've come out of previous shows, it's been, we'll do the same shit. Honestly, what it was, I was like, okay, cool, I have food again. Let's train like I'm bulking.
Yeah, 100%.
And getting under barbells and squatting again.
Yep.
My first prep, I kept barbell squatting the whole entire way through.
Wow.
And my legs atrophied.
Oh, I'm sure they did, yeah.
So much.
I can't imagine the leverage just felt the same the entire prep.
Oh, not
you
at
probably
all.
Went in there week after week and why do these feel like shit?
Dude, it was so discouraging. And I think what's when psychologically, when your training is discouraging and boring and not necessarily boring, but you don't feel like you're progressing. You don't even physically feel like you're just doing good work in the gym. It 100%. Makes the diet fucking harder.
No, I agree.
Everything.
That's harder. Why, and this isn't even the topic of the video, but this is a good rant to get on. I really hate when people use strength as a metric during prep to see if they're losing lean tissue, because it has nothing to do with where your strength is at, right? If you squatted 300 pounds for 10 reps at the end of your massing phase, and you're using 300 pounds for 10 reps at the end of your dieting phase, well, you're hypocaloric, you're training with high volumes that long, and you are super lean now. All those things are just literally working against you to produce the same amount of force that you were. There are all kinds of things that are happening, like protein uncoupling inside of the muscle tissue and all kinds of crazy physiology shit I could get into, but you're literally not able to exert the same amount of force or do the same amount of reps with that much weight. It's not going to happen. So you're setting yourself up for failure by focusing on, well, I got to maintain strength in this exercise and this one, and that's how I'm tracking my progress across my muscle groups. It's like, what did we do with you? We changed exercises. We increased rep ranges. You literally used less load, but volume went up slightly each mesocycle. So it's when you do that for a client, they're not able to focus on the strength loss because, well, hey, now I'm doing the 15 to 20 rep range in a hack squat instead of a Smith machine slow eccentric squat. Completely different exercise. I don't even know what I was using on hack squats because they haven't been in 2 mesocycles. And now I'm doing the 15 to 20 rep range. The last time I did hack squats, I was doing the 7 to 10 rep range. So, I'm going to use a little less weight. This makes sense. And they don't get caught up on those damn numbers. So that's why it's really cool to track the volume in the way that we do and just kind of set volume is very important, making sure that you're utilizing different rep ranges, make sure you're utilizing the novelty effect via different exercises, just that variation, all the principles that we preach at Renaissance Periodization, sports science principles. You know?
And less carbs, less food. but like in the gym, I feel like I'm getting the same training density.
100%.
Because I'm actually still getting pumps because of the metabolite accumulation.
100%.
And so it literally just feels like, cool, I don't feel like I'm dieting. In the gym, I don't feel like I'm dieting. At 8 p.m. at night, it does, yeah?
Yeah, 100%.
But I think that's where most people feel the effects of prep the worst is in training and in the gym. And we still use deloads, and we still
100%.
even brought calories up during the deloads, and it's just like so smooth, and we can go on that all day. But like coming out, I think throughout the whole prep we've changed exercises, but the pattern stayed the same. Like we went from SLDL to good morning on the reverse hack, which was fantastic.
Just like a slight change of the pennation angle or the pull of the fibers with the joint. It's creates this novelty effect that actually allows you to maintain lean tissue even better as you're dieting down. And you do that even when you're massing. Like when you're massing, and I talked about this actually a few days ago on the Team 4ROM forum, but 1 to 2 mesocycles I might keep an exercise in, like as far as like the heavier compound stuff. 1 to 2 mesocycles when I'm dieting, maybe 2 to 3 when I'm massing. Because you can make steady progress. You have the recovery ability because you have higher calories. You might not get overuse injuries as easily when you're massing. So if I keep a hack squat in for 3 mesocycles as opposed to 2 or 1, it might make sense during massing. When I'm dieting down, okay, well, we're probably just going to keep that in for 1 or 2 mesocycles. So like you said, you just change the pattern slightly. You don't risk running into those acute overuse injuries. Like you're doing the exact same thing for 3 months during a deficit. Well, like I said, you're already in a deficit. You don't have the recovery ability. You're going to start feeling those little weird nagging injuries, elbows, knees, hips, shit like that. So just changing that slightly helps quite a bit mitigate those types of things.
I mean, for example, like I had hack squat in, and I'm like, this is super fun. And then towards the end of that, I was just like, fuck this. And then we switched it to pendulum.
Yeah, you told me, you were like, can we just like put pendulum in? I was like, absolutely.
I'm like, I love this again. One thing that you mentioned when we were briefly chatting in the gym about the, the preparatory hypertrophy, I directly went home and like looked up that.
Yeah, cool, right?
And it was a lot of that was just sport, like it was sport application. That's still something that I've like want to get a grip on and learn more about. So when you mentioned like the preparatory hypertrophy of like, you're almost like preparing yourself through the entire prep while you're dieting for what's to come after. Like what exactly goes into all that?
Yeah, there's a lot of physiological rationale there. Basically building the machinery that is going to build the muscle or recruiting specific things to the tissue, etc. You can read a lot about that in the Scientific Principles of Hypertrophy Training. It's literally in there. We have a like pretty lengthy section on it. You're just putting those things in motion. So then whenever you do have the capacity to actually build the lean tissue, which obviously if you're using anabolics, and I don't know how much you want me to touch on that, but if you're using anabolics and shit, obviously you can build lean tissue during a prep. Once you add in calories, that's why the post-show rebound is actually a thing, especially for enhanced athletes. When you add in the food, and the food's there, and you're able to actually have the appropriate amount in order to begin to build muscle tissue, all that preparatory hypertrophy begins to show. And you just put on lean muscle tissue a lot quicker because it's all the machinery's there and you're ready to go. That's very layman, that's how it works.
Would you say like in layman's, it's almost like, okay, you're doing something so consistently for such a long period of time that your body is like, okay, cool, if you're doing this consistently enough, I get what you want. Now the only thing you haven't been giving me is food. So like once I have that, I'm going to reward you back.
Yeah, kind of. So, and to put it analogously, like just here's an analogy. Mike likes to use this one. It's a skyscraper analogy. When you build a skyscraper, which direction do you build first? Down. You're building down. You have to build the foundation. If you just build a skyscraper on land, it'll just, bad shit will happen.
My dumbass was thinking that it fucking built up.
Right. You actually build down first. So the prep is you building down, right? You're losing all the fat, blah, blah, but you're building the foundation of the skyscraper. And then you begin to mass and boom, there it is. And the skyscraper's nice and sturdy and you can actually put it up and it's not going to tip over. It's not going to, bad shit won't happen. Nothing bad down the road. So
that's great.
And
I mean, through the entire prep, it's like progressively every single week, my technique kept getting better and kept getting better. And so this post-show period, that's been a 5-week mesocycle, or 6 week?
5.
5 week.
4 to 1 paradigm.
There's been like intensifiers and using that stuff, which has been fun. It's been higher rep ranges. And so like what goes into the decision-making process, or like, I guess, what are the principles of like, all right, like I'm going to build out somebody's post-show rebound block. What does that look like?
So basically, again, you were hypocaloric for 16, 20, 24, depending on if you're natural or not. Some people even longer. My longest prep so far enhanced has been like 10, 12 weeks, but that's still quite a bit of time. You've been doing high volumes for a really long time. And that is one thing to make you a little more volume resistant. Not only that, but dieting hypocalorically also makes you somewhat volume resistant. You'll notice the pumps get a little less. You're not as sore toward the end of prep. You don't have the necessary food there to begin the, like we talked about, all the processes that create like the DOMs and all these things. So if you've already been doing that for 16, 20, 24 weeks, that's a damn long time to be doing high volume training. You are absolutely going to become volume resistant toward the end of that. Most people realize this by either, oh, my pumps aren't the same that they used to be, and then they're hurt, and 2 weeks after that, and then they got to take a little break, and then they come back to the gym, they're like, oh, my pumps are fucking crazy. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. So we want to be able to utilize this post-show quote-unquote rebound effect. We know that people are going to either, one, increase food slowly and control it pretty well like you have, or two, just completely eat like a fucking asshole, which happens to most competitors. First, second show, third show. It even happens to me. The fuck, you saw me in Orlando. I was, what, 240 already? I was like, I fucking ate some food, man.
Hey, man, you still
had a rough year.
You still had clear lines in the abs. You're all right.
Right, so that's a win for anabolics. So these, you know that those two things are going to happen, like one of those two things. And you know that when you're building muscle tissue, you should probably be training with, well, not maintenance volumes, probably high volumes, probably a good idea. So if you're already pretty volume resistant, well, you're adding food back in, right? So you don't got to go excessively crazy, because just having that food back in, more recovery, a little bit of a desensitization to that volume resistance, so resensitizing, but still quite volume resistant. You're going to get crazy pumps, and people want those crazy pumps after the show. They want to have that fun training. So you add in these intensity techniques, or you keep basically around the same amount of volume you had in that last training, the mesocycle, before the show. So we had them fun supersets, giant sets, all these other intensity techniques that anyone wants to do. What are some others, like drop sets, shit like that? I didn't put any drop sets in, I don't think, but I should use those more. They're a lot of fun. I'm just gonna start putting in like intensity technique of choice. Right?
Beautiful. Honestly, I think I like my reps the best.
I think so too. I really enjoy them. So you keep stuff like that in. You don't go right into just having straight sets at like the 7 to 10 rep range, because there's all that volume resistance. There's probably some acute little things that people don't feel, minor injuries. I don't want to call them injuries, but just like acute weird shit going on, right? You don't want to make that any worse. So like you said with the barbell squatting, you don't go right back into squatting with the barbell, 7 to 10 rep range, maybe 5 reps, and then, oh shit, my knees hurt, my hips hurt. Like all these injuries that I got during my contest prep are really showing their face now. And you keep that in. You push the volume slightly higher than you had it at the end of prep, because you have food, obviously. Your MRV is slightly higher since you have the food. So you start MEV to MRV still. Lots of intensity techniques, lots of fun pump stuff. Try to limit the load quite a bit. Oftentimes, especially with people on gear, they just got done with a full contest prep. The drugs are in their system. They're strong as hell because they just finished like 8 weeks of training. And they're like, all right, time to PR on bench press because I have 600 grams of carbs to the face for the last 6 days. And that's when people really get hurt. So it's smart to really mitigate the amount of load a client can use by using these types of intensity techniques and things like that. Keeping that in, keeping the variations somewhat similar to that last mesocycle, because again, you have the food, so you're going to be a little less in need of that novelty effect. And that sets you up in the future for the maintenance period to introduce some more novelty. So you don't actually maintain directly after a contest prep. You maintain the mesocycle afterwards. And if you'd like me to touch on the pharmacology side of things,
of course.
I had my clients do blood work, Chad included. They do blood work, and they show me what it looks like. And if they're able to push for another 4 weeks post-contest, which might extend their cycle out to 20 weeks long. Then we keep basically the baseline pharmacology and then take out all the harsh stuff. The harsh stuff is very self-explanatory, like the trends, the orals that are hepatotoxic, things like that. Keeping in the baseline pharmacology so they can really utilize that post-show phase to build muscle tissue. There are a couple ways you can do that. You can emphasize muscle groups immediately, or you can just spread volume across muscle groups evenly and just grow everywhere.
Yeah.
So what I normally do is just volume is pretty equal across the board. They're either regaining lost tissue, oftentimes natural guys are regaining a little bit of lost tissue, or they're just building muscle tissue all across the board. Then they go into that maintenance period. So show prep, eat some damn good food, high volume training, have fun, get those fucking awesome pumps.
Yep.
After about 4 weeks of that, you're going to notice that the pumps begin to fade just a little bit. And you're, at that point, 24, 28, 30 weeks of high volume training. It's time for a fucking maintenance phase. And with maintenance comes maintenance everything. Maintenance pharmacology, maintenance calories, and maintenance training volume. But back to the point of the blood work, if someone's blood work is a little off, I basically just, you can get done with food what you're going to do even with leaving the farm in. Most people, again, eat like assholes. They have a shitload of carbohydrates. That preparatory hypertrophy is already in place. So I just take them down to their baseline of TRT or whatever their sports TRT is or whatever it may be, and just increase the food slowly. And you can get it done with food. That's totally fine. And at that point, you maintain for that mesocycle, you maintain for the next mesocycle, you have 8 weeks of total off period of pharmacology, and you're good to go, hopefully, after blood work, for the next massing block, which will be 2 to 4 mesocycles of massing, emphasizing for Chad, it's going to be a lot of delts, probably more back even, and upper chest.
Fuck yeah.
And then that'll be the whole periodization model.
That'll be great. That'll be great. I have no idea. I'm very fucking excited for where I am after those those periods of massing.
Oh
like,
yeah,
even
these last 4 weeks, you're just like
this last 4 weeks, I've just went up like that. I think genuinely, and back to this because I think it's been really good, and I also think it's worth having a conversation with, especially people that are like looking to do their first couple preps or something, or even without it's now, but like having this kind of structure has really helped me because I think a lot of people in prep struggle with not having the structure after.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they've been so like in it for the last, 16, 20 plus weeks that now that they have like freedom, they leverage that. They just like go too far on the deep end. And for me, it's like cool, like I could eat out every weekend and keep eating like shit, but like I don't want to feel like ass during this training where I'm doing 15 fucking reps of pendulum squat.
100%.
So
back pumps immediately and stuff like that. Yeah, no fun.
And so like because I value that side of the thing so much, it's helped with the food focus quite a bit. It's also been interesting now that I'm deloading. My hunger's been like super high. But what you mentioned as far as like become less sensitive to the high volumes because you've been doing it for so long, this maintenance period and being able to bring it back down to resensitize to it, how long does the maintenance volume last? Is this maintenance period still working up from MEV to MRV? For those that don't know, that's minimum effective volume to maximum recoverable volume. Will it still work up, or is it just maintenance for flat out like 4 or 5 weeks? Yeah,
so any maintenance period that you do, and you're including the maintenance pharmacology, you're including the maintenance volume, it's literally just that, maintenance volume. You're not working from, your minimum effective volume means that you're applying the minimum effective stimulus to produce a desired result.
Yep.
So if that's for strength, it's a certain amount. If that's for hypertrophy, it's a certain amount, right? That applies for sport too.
Yep.
The minimum effective volume to make you sprint faster. How many sprints do you need to do? Yada, yada, yada. So the minimum effective volume for most people to initiate some sort of process post-training where you begin to grow muscle is 10 to 14 sets, let's say. So maintenance volume obviously has to be less than that, and that's per week, sets per week. So for Chad, we might introduce hamstrings at like 4 sets a week. Chest at like 7, 8 sets a week. Same thing with your back, same thing with your quads. Delts and biceps might take on a little more, a little less. It really just
Are you
depends.
telling me that I only need 4 sets to maintain my hamstrings because I develop hamstrings? I don't feel like I had developed hamstrings.
You might even need less.
Crazy.
Yeah, hamstrings are one of those things that take on a lot of eccentric damage, and usually those muscle groups seem to have slightly less maintenance volume, even MEVs. Like my MEV for hamstrings is probably like 6 sets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these averages are averages. They don't apply to everybody, and the more advanced you get, the better your technique gets. You actually probably decrease those sets a little bit. As you notice, your technique got way better and way better, and you actually could do less sets and get more out of it.
Yeah.
So
It's, I don't know if you saw the 205 versus 205
Oh, yeah.
6 months
No,
ago.
that's
And we
fucking
can put
insane.
those changes up there. My chest.
yeah.
Insane. I'm curious for you, like, watching through the prep, because I feel like it's a little bit different for your lens to watch somebody's progression in physique as they're losing fat and also building tissue. Have you been kind of able to identify, like, all right, how many sets do I need for the chest or the delts?
100%. I have all that stuff on a separate sheet.
Yeah.
For all my clients.
Yeah. So, like, for me personally, because I think this is interesting for people to kind of see and learn from seeing my physique, like, what is nagging for me in the sense to where I will need a lot more volume of it versus, like, what do I not need a little bit more, that much volume of? Like, what goes into your decision making?
Yeah. Do you mean like emphasizing, or as far as how your muscle groups handle a certain amount of volume?
Both.
For you, emphasis, we already know what we're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mostly like the upper chest area, your delts.
Yeah.
More back, just because it's men's physique. You can never have too big of a back.
Yeah.
So that's easy to spot just via looking at an athlete, right? Like okay, these are your weak points. Like, it's easy to spot that my back is a weak point. Like, my biceps are a weak point. My calves are not.
Nope.
So that stuff's easy as a coach. As somebody like us who, we look at physiques all day. Not in a sexual way or anything, unless it's Chad coming across my computer screen.
Dude, if you look at my Explore page, it's just shirtless people everywhere.
100%.
I'm like, we're fucking weird. You ever think about that?
Yeah, it's a fun, quote unquote, sport. Right? So, as far as like seeing somebody's MEV, MRV for their muscle groups, that's as simple as, here are the averages for most people. Here's what the client is telling me. They did 12 sets of biceps, and they're like, oh, I didn't really get sore. Pump was decent, whatever. And then based on that, you kind of can increase slowly. During a deficit, it's obviously a little lower. So like if your deficit MEV to MRV was like 13 sets to 16 sets for your chest, which is roughly around where yours is, I believe. It might be like 10 sets to 18 sets. You have a larger gap because you have food whenever you're hypercaloric, right? So your MEV at that point, or your MV at that point, maintenance volume at that point, is something like 6-7 sets.
Yeah, cool. And then for maintenance period and coming out of this, obviously I think as we've progressed through the prep, we went to more higher SFR movements, more machines, dumbbells, cables, like stuff like that. So going into maintenance, would you say that we're going to bring in, and I asked you this earlier, but I'm asking for the video, more barbell movements, more raw stimulus movements, just to get back into that?
Yep. So RSM, what he just referred to, is raw stimulus magnitude. It's the stimulus you get from an exercise, but it's probably a little more fatiguing. So it's just the raw stimulus systemically, what you're getting from that exercise. And generally barbell movements are very taxing. So deadlift is probably at the top of that, right? Most people can deadlift from the floor quite a bit of weight. So that's the kind of stuff we'll begin to introduce into the maintenance period, because we just want a large raw stimulus magnitude. We're not worried about going up to like 13 sets of deadlifts. Like you might do 2 sets of deadlifts and get the fuck out of the gym, right? And that's going to maintain a large majority of your muscle. After that, we'll go back into more machine-based heavy compounds like leg press, hack squats, etc. We'll keep in some stuff like back squatting, but we might modify it to where you're doing like a slow eccentric, things like that. Anything that we can use. So if we put anything on the back burner, it'll be something like a raw stimulus magnitude, where you're just doing a couple of sets of that and just really slow and controlled. And then the other muscle groups will have probably quite a bit of machine stuff thrown in if you're going to emphasize them. So still lots of compound stuff. with machines thrown in whenever we move back into massing. But for the maintenance period, yeah, it's going to be a lot of barbell work, quite a bit. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, your setup's going to look like that too. Barbell work coming back in. Because we're playing the same game. Caroline and I are literally on the same exact timeline, which is so fun.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's basically any stuff that I have. So let's open the audience up to we have an audience, guys, behind the camera, if you didn't know.
Yeah, sure. You want to repeat the question?
Yeah, so Matt basically asked, what is the science behind full range of motion? Like, why would we do it? It's
why
funny.
Is it important?
Yeah, why is it important? It's funny, we did a podcast with Alan Bishop, if you know Alan Bishop? Yeah. And we asked him, like, the same thing with his athletes for basketball and whatnot, and it's like, well, there's some applications, especially in sport, where we would use partial ranges of motion. I think to add to your question, too, behind the importance and the science behind the full range of motion, is like, in a hypertrophy application, is there literally any time or any application where we would not go through a full range of motion? Like, maybe if the person, like, gets less stimulus by doing that, which I would argue is, like, how is that ever going to be the case?
I'll just look at the technique, right?
Yeah. Like, how is that ever going to be the case? So,
I've had people say that, like, as I get closer to the floor, I lose the stretch in my hamstrings. I'm like, okay, let me see your straight leg deadlift. And they just do it, and I'm like, okay, now put your knees back more and put your butt up more. And they're like, oh, shit, what is that? I'm like, yeah, you don't stop stretching your hamstrings magically midway through the range of motion. It's not a thing. But yeah, as far as why full range of motion is important, first and foremost, stretch-mediated hypertrophy is a big thing. The eccentric phase is probably responsible for a large magnitude of the growth stimulus that you get. When you stop, you're actually not recruiting specific motor units in specific areas of the tissue. So if you're going through a full range of motion, you actually are, quote unquote, turning on more motor units inside of the tissue that you're stretching and that you potentially would not hit if you hadn't. Not only that, it's safer for your joints to go through a full range of motion. It's less systemically fatiguing. So systemic fatigue is just how fatigued you get from a specific exercise, let's say, over the course of time. And systemic fatigue in total even encapsulates cortisol from outside stressors and things going on in your life and the training stimulus itself. So if you're able to limit the load, go through a more full range of motion, your joints are safer, you're less systemically fatigued, and you have a better way to track where the range of motion started and stopped. So that helps you to track in a logbook. So like, let's say you take somebody through a partial range of motion leg press. Some of them are stopping here, some of them are stopping here, then they're stopping here. You have no idea what the volume actually was, and the next week you come in and you don't actually apply any sort of overload to the tissue because now they're just more weight and now they're every rep stopping here. So the other component of volume, which is force times distance. So in sports science, we talk about two types of volume. Generally, when you hear me debate somebody on volume accumulation, we're talking about sets. Mathematical volume is what most people learn in like NASM and classrooms. Sets times reps times weight, but then everybody forgets about force times distance. Force times distance is another component of volume. So whenever your force times distance is completely fucking different rep to rep, how do you track that? And whenever you load the bar up even more and you're going through another even less range of motion and the personal trainers are yelling at you, oh yeah, let's go. Yeah, you did fucking 500 pounds in the leg press this week. You only did 405 last week.
My favorite is the last, like, oh, let's get 5 more reps of hip thrust with this range of motion.
Yeah.
That's the best. That's my favorite one.
there were a couple of studies that came out. And this was just last year. And I'm always highly skeptical of this stuff too. It really cracks me up. Training at that end range of motion and doing some partials might be beneficial. Most of that stuff's based on EMG. EMG is very limited. It doesn't actually track internal force of the tissue. So like when you're in those most disadvantageous positions, so like let's say in a lat prayer, when you're fully stretched up here, there might be no activity on an EMG, but you're actually moving from that position to this position requires so much internal stimulus that you're growing muscle tissue from that 100%. So injury might be a time when I have partials in. If they're like, hey, if I go this deep, my hip hurts. But even then, I will find a way to standardize the technique. The standardization of technique is one of the most important aspects of training. So if you can standardize the technique, control the eccentrics, things like that, and you find that going this deep in a leg press, you get a little less pump and soreness, try this deep, whatever, no big deal, right? as long as you can standardize that, like you set the pins to a certain aspect, like a certain area, their leg hurts when they go from here to here. Okay, well, let's just modify some technique first. We'll try that out or modify the technique. Everybody's anthropometry is different. Maybe somebody has their foot like this and they just need to be out here a little bit and the pain's completely gone. So if I can modify their technique, take them through a 4 range of motion and they can reap all these benefits, why wouldn't I? But if they're like, nah, pain's still there, I'm like, all right, cool. Let's just, we'll decrease that range of motion a little bit for the next 4 weeks. We'll implement some proprioceptive feedback stuff where I'm like touching the muscle with like a tennis ball or the tendon or whatever it may be that's going on with the tennis ball, and then trying to introduce the set slowly. And then you just kind of get deeper and deeper and deeper. But there's just so many benefits of just using the damn full range of motion. Like this is my thing. And I've debated this on numerous podcasts with numerous people online all the time. Any argument to use partials, shortened range of motion of any kind, always boils down to what? What are they trying to do? They want to use more weight, right?
Yeah.
Every fucking argument, every single one.
Yeah.
There's never, it's never anything else.
Yeah.
It's always like, well, I do partials at this range of motion because of this and this. I'm like, oh, cool. And what load did you use? And they're like, well, yeah, I'm like leg press like 800 pounds like that, you know? I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. So how about you just go to 400 pounds and you do it all the way?
Yeah.
Like, well, like, benefits because like there's stuff and things going on. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. You like to leg press 800 pounds.
Yeah,
I got it.
literally.
Right on. Yeah. Partials in the lengthened position is something that was also studied in this last year, and there was a study or two that came out that was like, oh, maybe partials in the lengthened position, since that stretch mediated hypertrophy is very important, maybe that's a good idea. And even then, I'm just kind of like, okay, standardization of technique is probably more important. Actually seeing if you're progressing in the gym is more important, like overload. I understand where they're coming from with wanting to implement them. I'm not going to dog on anyone who does, but I am going to tell you, hey, you're going to be more fatigued at the end of your mesocycle. You're going to probably fatigue too quickly. You might not even produce a better stimulus next week because you have no idea. You just, like, what do? You take the partial to failure, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point,
Sometimes going into the next week, you'll have to use less load because you're more fatigued. Knowing what the fuck is the point of that?
So I just think that the standardization of technique is so important, and you're getting so much out of that full range of motion anyway. The lockout, the eccentric control, the deep stretch, like it's a perfect storm. Why change that?
That is the best way to end this. I think every video, every piece of content just should be an argument for full range of motion.
Right.
Every single video ever posted in history. Well, guys, make sure that you do follow Jared on his OnlyFans.
Just started it.
Just started. I think
700K in sales already.
Really?
I just take pictures of fans. Nobody knows that until they buy.
Oh, fuck.
OnlyFans. You guys get it?
No, that's great. Maybe your calves
Ceiling
too.
fans.
I would subscribe
fans.
to your OnlyFans if it was just your calves.
I bet a lot of people would.
I think you'd really be onto something.
We got
there.
something here, guys.
Yeah, genuinely. Anyways, if you want to learn how to train for a very long time and not hurt yourself and do things intelligently, you should look into Jared's stuff. Jared, where can they find all of your good stuff?
Instagram, Jared_feathers.
OnlyFans.
Sometimes I put up TikToks.
We love your TikTok, dude.
I hate it over there.
Oh, we love it because we can tell that you hate it, and that's why we love it.
I really hate it. I'll get such stupid comments on there. Like, some 20-year-old will be like, "What's up with your hair?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Ask your mom. She gave me this haircut." I just stoop to their fucking level over there. It's just like,
that's the best part about it.
It's ridiculous, man. I hate it. I post a video that I probably posted on Instagram. I get the hell off. It's got me like 25K fucking subscribers. I don't know what that means over there on TikTok. Like, Instagram's become the same thing, right?
Yo, dude, yeah.
Like, they're all just reels, and now you get like everybody and their mom has 100,000 followers. I'm like, okay, this is stupid. Yeah. But Instagram, Jared_feather, TikTok, Jared_feather, RP Strength, YouTube. It's the Renaissance Periodization YouTube channel. Maybe you can add a link or whatever. Yep. That's where a lot of our content is. A lot of me coaching people and giving awesome cues, kind of like Chad does on his reels. Like, hey, do this thing and you'll feel this in your hamstrings more. I'm doing that while we're coaching people through videos where they're training really hard. Dr. Mike Isotel is on there talking about hypertrophy concepts, all the stuff we talked about in this video. He goes pretty in depth on a lot of that stuff. Renaissance Periodization website. We have our books. We have many books. A lot of them have been used in universities. The diet book, the hypertrophy book. We have a strength book if people are interested in that. But we're all just a group of fun, nerdy sports scientists that like to talk about nerdy shit, right? And that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks, dude.
Thanks for having me on, my man.
Yeah, man.
So now I get naked.
Yes.
Perfect.